to the Student Ministry Conversations podcast. This podcast is all about equipping, encouraging, and inspiring youth pastors weekly with topics that are brought to the table by youth pastors from all over the world. And now here's your host for this week, Melissa Stevenson.
Hey everybody, it's Melissa here with Student Ministry Conversations. I've got my friend Shelby here today, but before we get started, go check out our website, studentministryconversations.org. And we've got all kinds of show notes and past episodes, some great blog articles, and all kinds of fun things for you to check out. So go check that out. So our goal is to equip and for every kind of student leader to be a better version of themselves. So we're excited to talk about some new stuff today. So the other day, I was printing pictures to go up on our mission trip wall. We have a kind of a bulletin board that I inherited. It's crooked from the 90s. And I've got the past year's mission trips up there with the poster that I made to advertise it. And then I've got the different pictures up there of the different years. And it's kind of neat to see the past years all compilated together. But then I started to think, this is the only printed pictures I have of this youth group, like at all. So there's this concept. So Shelby's a photographer, and I'm going to ask her in a second how she got into photography. But there's this concept of this being the most photographed generation of all time without printed pictures. Yes. Because we take them constantly on our phones and we post them to social media. But what does that mean if that social media platform disintegrates or disappears? What happens to those pictures? What if you lose access to it? So Shelby, that's what I wanted to talk about today, and what that means for ministry in general and what kind of changes we've seen. So tell me, how did you get into to photography? And then you said you and your photographer friends actually talk about this. So what's up with that?
Yeah, so I have been doing photography almost 5 years. And it was actually, I've always been intrigued by photography. But it was actually during COVID. I was in grad school at the time. I was stuck in my house for 52 days. And I just didn't realize how much of an extrovert I was. Like, I craved that human connection and interacting with people. And I'd always wanted to do photography, but photography is a highly saturated industry here in Abilene. And so I wasn't really sure about it.
Oh, absolutely.
Husband, then fiance, was like, go for it. Like, what's the worst that could happen? Try it. So when Texas back up that year, May 2020, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do it. So I just decided to do like free sessions for friends and family. I did Christmas minis, December 2020, and it kind of just spiraled from there. And then like friends asked me to do their wedding and friends. And so it just, word of mouth is kind of how I got started. But it really just came down to, and I told my husband this, photography felt like a ministry for me, because I think there's something so incredible about capturing people as they are and letting them see just how beautiful they are, and the way that God made them. So that's kind of how I got started with my photography.
I love that. Oh, yeah. I love that so much that that's the way you think of it. I think that's so cool. Yeah. So you got into photography that way. And so we had talked about the printing pictures. You said you talked about this with photography people. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so actually one of my friends, she's a photographer, just posted this on her story a few days ago. And I don't remember the exact like verbiage, but it came down to the lines of like, we need to print pictures more. Was saying, I'm talking to myself here, because even as photographers, we don't print our own pictures very often. Sorry, my dogs are barking. I'm finding that clients aren't really printing their pictures that often, or really downloading their pictures. So I know they're not really getting printed anywhere. It's not so much of a concern of, online print store, but the tangible, there's something so amazing about having that tangible photograph. And I'm finding more and more, like every year, people are printing them less and less. And it's something that's continuing to happen. I remember like when I was in high school, I graduated almost 9 years ago. Like my parents like printed all of my senior pictures, and people aren't doing that anymore.
Yes.
not something that happens. Like
Yes.
that doesn't happen anymore. And it's scary. Like you said, what if our Google Photos fail? What if our iCloud fails?
Yes.
It's gone.
What if Facebook disappears?
Yeah.
That's where, like, the 12-year-old and her first steps, the only place I have them are on Facebook.
Yeah.
Like,
exactly. Yeah.
So when we're talking about youth ministry, well, in church in general, we don't have yearbooks at church. We have directories, and that is like a every kind of so many years. It's not an every year thing, like maybe every 5 years or 10 years, something like that. And I do like that aspect because you get all of those candid photos and things like that into one place. But we don't have the people taking pictures and storing them of church events, things like that at the church anymore because we're not having those. We're not going. You're not taking the film to the Eckards and getting the pictures back a week later to then share those with the church or even the church themselves. And so that question is, are we documenting the kids in our youth ministry group without printing those pictures?
Yeah.
What do you think of that? I'll rephrase it. Do you think it's important that we document the kids as they grow up in the youth group, just like we document our own kids?
No, I think that's really important. So, and I'm just now thinking of this and didn't even think about the correlation, but I was out at my parents' house a couple weeks ago, and they still have like my bedroom as it was, like when I was in high school. And I was looking in my drawer of like photographs that I have. Because like I was that kid, like I printed pictures all the time. I mean, I have like totes of printed. But I found this directory from the church that we went to. So I'm originally from Ohio. And the church that we went to had this directory. And I remember it was really a church yearbook. I mean, that's what it was. It had like, the yearly like volleyball league that we played. And it had those candid like action photos. It had the youth ministry photographs of us learning different lessons from the pastor. It had children's church where we did like the puppet shows for the kids. And it was truly like a highlight of what the church was. And that was really, I don't know, it was really important. And like looking back, like I remember a lot from that because I think I was in children's church at that age. I think I was maybe 10. But I think that's something, and I don't even know if churches are really doing that anymore. And I think that's really important to capture that. Because I mean, church, that is just as important as having these high school yearbooks. That is remembering and capturing these spiritual milestones for these youth. So I think that's something that needs to be printed and documented in that way.
Yeah. I mean, our church has been in the same location, not the same building, but the same location for, I have to do math, 142 years. And so, and it's neat to look back because we have those directories from those earlier days of, and pictures, and they did a 100-year anniversary directory. Oh, it was like a history book.
Okay.
And I have one in my office. Yeah, and it's got pictures of past pastors. But I'm thinking 20 years from now, if we don't print pictures, like we won't have that 100 years from now, kind of thing. To gather that kind of information. Yeah. So I think that's a necessary thing, but maybe we need to figure out how to store them properly. But my bigger thought was I am taking pictures of our youth kids and I'm posting them on social media. But what happens, knock on wood, I'm not there at the church anymore. How does the church later access that if it's on my personal, like, Google? And so should we only, this is a big question, should we only be taking pictures and uploading those to the church's property of, like, that's just hard, right? Like,
yeah. Like my photographer brain is like, okay, these need to be stored on like an external hard drive and like USB, and because
right? Yeah.
A big issue right now is like Facebooks are getting hacked like left and right. I've had multiple friends like everything, like all the photos I mean, I've had family members tell me like they lost all photos of like their newborn or when their child was a newborn because they posted
Oh
everything
my
on
God.
Facebook. They lost their account because it was
Hmm.
hacked, and so they lost all those photographs, and they didn't print them. So
Oh, that's totally panicky.
yeah, so it's really important to have like those photos backed up to like an external hard drive, USB. Obviously, I think we need to be printing pictures more, but having that backup in case, or say like you
Hmm.
move on for the next person, they have those saved photos. So
That's a good idea because that could, my computer stays with the church, and so that external hard drive could stay with the church. That
yeah,
makes sense. Like all my passwords get passed on anyway. So I like that. That's a great idea. That's a good practical idea. So I love that. What do you think about what kind of pictures should we be taking of our youth groups? And then I'm going to ask you in a minute about social media. So be thinking about that. But so are there specific moments we need to make sure that we capture?
okay. So for me as a photographer and the style, I am very much a documentary photographer, and that's for me like say weddings. I capture things as they are.
Hmm.
I'm not a very, you need to pose this way or that way. I think moments need to be captured as they are. There's something so genuine,
Hmm.
authentic about that I love. And I think that goes for capturing these different events or milestones, for these youth at church. So I'm very much into the candid moments of whether it be a lesson or like a group activity or church camp. I think all of
Hmm.
those need to be documented. So whether even like worship, um, just I mean every little part of it needs to be documented as authentically as possible.
So I'm usually the one taking pictures in church, which probably is irritating to the rest of the congregation. But one I got up out of my seat and went to the front to take a picture was this family that they were lighting the Advent candle at Christmas. This is 2 years ago, but the youngest son was going into the military, and this was their last family together, that they knew that this moment was going to be happening because they didn't know. I mean, once he's in basic right now, yay! But where he's going to go after that. And so I wanted to make sure that we captured that for mom, just the four of them doing that. And then he didn't end up going in the military last year, so they did it again this year, and I took the same picture, like just in case. So we have it again. But I thought those are kind of things are important. We take pictures at like we just renamed one of our buildings, and so we take pictures of those kinds of events. The baptisms, those big moments of that, because I think for me it's weird because I know when I got baptized, there were pictures taken, but I wonder if people feel, and maybe you can add on to this, that it's rude, that they're not supposed to have their phone out in church. What do you feel about that? Do you think there's that kind of moment?
There's definitely going to be some pushback with like the picture taking. Um,
Hmm.
the photographer, there's certain moments that I'll photograph, like say during like wedding receptions, like I'll photograph like the prayer or
Hmm.
moments during like the wedding ceremony that I photograph, and you can almost feel like the judgment of like you don't
Yes.
be praying right now. Like why are you taking that picture? You know what I mean? Like there's
Hmm.
I feel that. So
Yes.
there's some of that, and that's
Yeah.
okay.
I think it was just different when it was an actual camera back in the 90s versus a
Right.
cell phone.
Yeah. No, I definitely
Yeah.
there is that like why are you doing that? Um yeah, because
Hmm.
taken pictures like on my phone before, and yeah, so I definitely see that kind of judgment towards taking the photograph. Um but like I said, it's so important to get those like even like baby dedications
Yeah.
or those are
Yes.
such
Well,
precious.
because it's not going to happen again.
Yeah. So
Hmm.
I agree.
Yeah, yeah. I took a picture of the youth in a line with their ashes the other day, And I was trying to get them all to line up while everybody else is singing. And I was like, just do this, I'm taking this picture because everyone is looking at me. Stop it. So they finally did it. But because I thought, what a cool image.
Right.
I'm not a photographer, but sometimes I see it and go, oh, that would look cool on my social media. So that brings up social media.
Okay.
So using those pictures of that youth activities or those youth moments, there's a couple of questions I have on this. Do we use all of that on social media, or are there certain things that in youth moments you feel it's too much, like it's too intimate of a moment within a youth group of like either a lesson or a prayer that you think this doesn't belong on social media?
I would say yes. Like personally, like there are certain photos that could be taken of me, whether it be like during worship, because I do tend to be a very like intimate, like I raise my hands and I sometimes get teary eyed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very vulnerable, right? So I think out of respect,
That's true.
like the youth, I think maybe things like that. Maybe take the photo, but maybe not post that on social media. Just like there's certain photographs I take, like that I wouldn't post out of respect, And now you could always do where like you ask them like, hey, like how do you feel about this being posted, and like the parents, things like that, like getting consent. So yeah, I definitely think there's certain moments that don't need to be posted. And that's just kind of coming from the standpoint. I'm a very like private person, just like photographer, but so I would say yes, to some extent. Like,
well, because you're on the other side of the camera.
Yeah.
Right? You're on the Okay, so but we can use those pictures, especially when we're out in public, we're having a fun time. We should be using those pictures on social media to kind of like, hey, come hang out with us, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Alrighty. So I know we both have things to do today, so this is like super short episode.
No, that's okay.
But I think that we kind of got the say it again.
No, I totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think we got kind of the big things, like that we need to print pictures. I love the idea of the hard drive, like passing that on to your next person.
Yeah.
But also just having that access at the church for whoever else needs it. But making an effort to take pictures of the moments that are important. So I think we got the main point.
Yeah.
Okay, did you have anything else that was on your brain when you were like, oh, I do want to talk about that? That sounds great.
I just think it's really important, like we kind of mentioned this, like say 40, 50 years from now, like I want my grandchildren to, have those tangible photographs of their family or like their church, because many of our children, they're going to grow up, and our grandchildren may grow up in the very same church that we're raising our kids in, and I want them to have that. And I think we can use these photographs to kind of teach them and show them not just history, but kind of help them in their spiritual journeys, and kind of show them what it may look like for them. So there's a lot of different elements in the importance of printing these photographs and having them.
That's a lovely thought. I love that. Thank you. Alrighty, so I'm going to say thank you to Shelby. If y'all have questions or comments, please post them in the sections that they belong to. And if you have something that you want to talk to us about, let us know. Let's talk. So y'all have a great day, and we'll see you later.